Hi, and welcome to another edition of Billy and Sam Review Races. As you can see, this is the Des Moines, Iowa edition, Ironman 70.3 Des Moines. We just finished this. This is a nice fresh race review. We're going to remember most of the stuff, hopefully.
I still got pizza in my mouth.
One of us pushed play, and it wasn't the one with pizza in his mouth. So, we'll continue on. You got any thoughts about? So check-in. Check-in is downtown. It is not at the transition. So it is in a different spot. Just be aware of that. That transition and I mean it is at the finish line. Transition and the finish line they're about 3 miles apart. So they're in different spots, but it didn't seem like that big a deal. It went pretty fast.
I mean, after the race, they had a shuttle that would take you back to transition. Took forever to wait for the shuttle, but they at least had it. So, but just know that the transition is at Gray's Lake, which is where the swim is, and then the finish line is in downtown Des Moines.
So we get a backpack and a shirt when we check in. Do we have a backpack? Sorry. We are all kinds of professional. Hi, and welcome to Professional Cinematography with Billy and Sam. So he's going to give you a nice zoomed in on the backpack.
So it actually doesn't have pockets on the side or anything, which I think is actually fine. I mean, it's just a giant backpack. Seems to be pretty sturdy and has actually a pretty good handle on the top for carrying. So, I mean, as far as backpacks go, Ironman usually does pretty well on those.
I mean, you get a backpack, and not every race you do, but they're charging at, what are they charging this? $450? Is the standard?
I mean, you get the sweet T-shirt with the triangles on it that Sam loves.
Yeah, this is definitely not getting worn again. So, you know, they went up on the price for races this year. I mean, I guess they go up. I don't know. They go up every so often, and this year was one of them. And I don't love that the backpack didn't increase in quality. If you're going to charge more for the same product,
and maybe upgrade some of your stuff. I mean, I had no idea how much the backpacks cost, but I'm assuming for $5 or $10 you can probably get a nicer grade. If you're raising the price $50, then $10 can go.
So we know that Ironman is heavily invested in our channel and obviously watches and cares about what we think. So definitely expect something to be done. But the new shirts are, I don't know if this is a Des Moines edition shirt, but as Nestle bought Ironman decided that it should look a lot more like every other race shirt that you get, and they sold all of it.
Yeah, different stuff on each side,
the back,
everything on the back.
So we have a lot of sponsors that were not in previous iterations of Ironman shirts. That was always liked, kind of cool that it just talked about Ironman. Always wish that they would put stuff on the back, and so Ironman obviously listened to us and put sponsors on the back. So yeah, because when you're running with somebody or somebody's behind you running, you can see where they raced, and that's always kind of cool. But Ironman is just on the front. So
I think the shirt's fine.
I mean,
it's different.
It feels like a nicer grade shirt than we got last year.
Well, maybe because they had some extra money from all the sponsors.
The sponsors wanted their shirts, because my shirts last year, like, I'm losing strings all over them. I don't know what Chinese.
So maybe that's where they
out.
Put the money from the extra fee or whatever.
Yeah, because this looks like a $100 shirt. Obviously, really money well spent.
All right, so
I'm a little
kinda,
grumpy, I guess.
Yeah, that kind of lines up transition. I mean, not transition. Check-in, which was, standard Ironman check-in.
Yeah. So everything goes smooth.
Just in a different area than transition.
They did a very good job about asking, because we were there at the same time. Hey, do you guys want to be together? And do you want to be facing the same way or facing different ways? And that was really nice. So kudos to the check-in team for thinking of that. And
I asked for adjacent numbers.
Okay,
and
never mind.
After I asked for adjacent numbers, they said, do you want to be side by side or do you want to be facing each other? And so we've never had that before. They've never offered that. So side by side means we were 1177 and 1179. So that's side by side. If you were 1178 and 1179, then you would have been face to face. So anyway, it worked out great for us. We really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And that, I don't think that was an Ironman thing. I think that was just the volunteer
Yeah.
person or whoever the person was
running the check-in. So kudos. So you drop off your bike Ironman day before. They had eight bikes per rack.
Hate that. They had plenty of room. They could do 6 if they wanted to, but I mean, 8 is fine if you're doing a bagged your clothes or whatever, and you go somewhere else to change your clothes. But I mean, it's super tight. And there were a lot of new people in this race.
There were a lot of new people.
I mean, for us, we had room. It was fine.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it on getting set up. Morning of.
It's an early race. I think the transition opens at 5.
Transition opens at 5.
Closed at 6:15, and you had a half a mile walk to the swim start.
And they did have a swim area, and I always appreciate that, that you could get into. It closed at 6:20, and at 6:19 they were not letting anybody in. So, I get it. That's just part of the rules. Bless you.
Thank you.
But they provided that, and that's always appreciated. It's nice thoughtful.
Do you want to go straight into the swim from here?
Sure.
I mean, it's a Z-ish pattern. It's
looks
kind
like an S to me.
Maybe even an S. Yeah. There were the first 3 turns are left-hand turns. The third left-hand turn, you were about 60% finished with the race. So you came straight out of the swim start. You went to a red buoy, turned left. Went to another red buoy, turned left, and that kind of made a box. And then you made a third left, and that kind of completed the box. Yes. And then you made a right. So the next 2 turns were right turns. And it wasn't a straight, it was more of an angled S, I guess. There were a lot of turns. You got notes on the swim?
So, you got any stories?
I got stories, but you go ahead.
So, I decided to do this race on hard mode. I actually went ahead and said, it was too easy to do it just regular, like somebody. I'm going to make it hard. So, you may have noticed I gained a little bit of weight.
I didn't notice at all.
So, we talk about never do anything new on race day, and wearing a wetsuit is not new for me, but wearing a too tight wetsuit is a little new for me. So I got in the water, I could not breathe. So I could not figure out whether this was a panic attack or I literally couldn't breathe. But they had a lifeguard before you got to the first buoy, which is 100 yards. And I was breaststroking to her. She's got the rescue rope. Like, obviously this guy doesn't need to be here. And I'm like, hey, I just need you to unzip my back a little bit. This is a little constricting.
I have also gained weight, and I mean, we're using the same wetsuits that we used for forever. And I had to get used to breathing. So we did a race 2 weeks ago, and it was not wetsuit legal. So this is the first time I put on a wetsuit in 9 months, maybe more than that. I don't know. So it did take some getting used to get used to the breathing.
So I was precisely 1 minute faster with the wetsuit than without. To tell you,
I was a bunch. I think I was 9 minutes faster with the wetsuit.
See?
Without.
Yeah. So don't forget, if you haven't worn the wetsuit in a while, maybe pop that bad boy on and try it before race day. Also, when I was shipping my bike, the good folks at Delta, who is not a sponsor of the show, so they don't really, we get to say whatever we want, do an excellent job of manhandling the bike all the way through the airport. And so we have disc brakes on the bikes, and those are up against the side of the bike bag, and of course they get bent. Pro tip, because we've had this problem before, and I think it was in Des Moines, where we had a bike issue, and I think it was Billy, had a bike issue, so take it to it's check-in is where they have set up. The bike guys have set up.
Oh, it was Des Moines with the battery.
Yeah.
Yeah, they charge you.
If you do it the day before, they will charge you.
If you do it the day of,
they can't charge you. It's free. So, I get immediately to transition to check right in the morning, and I take my bike immediately to the mechanic, who was like, "Why didn't you fix this yesterday?" I really wanted to say
because you charge me.
Because it's free today.
Yeah.
But so he's bending and working on it, and the line is getting longer and longer behind me. And he's like, "Dude, I'm not going to be able to get this perfect." I know. Do the best you can. You need a new rotor. You should have come to see me yesterday. And I said it like 3 or 4 times. I understand it's free this morning, and I'm gonna put this bike back on a Delta airplane after this. And shockingly, the loving attention that they show my bike, if I put a new rotor on it, they're just gonna bend that joker. Why am I spending all this money? So, the rotor's warped. So every 3/4 of a turn, I've got an automatic brake that I'm hitting. Hard mode. So we'll go into the bike.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Stories from the swim. You got stories for the swim?
So I started at the back. Not at the very back. I think my group. So my last swim was 58 minutes.
Yeah.
The one we did 2 weeks ago. Not a good swim for me. So Sam's up there with like the 40 to 45 minute people, and I'm like, yeah, this is not my people. I'm going to start back to the back. So I think I started with like the 50 to 55 minute people. And usually you would get people that are not very good swimmers back there, but I think that everybody back there was confident enough that they were going to make the time to finish the swim that they didn't push themselves up towards the front. I think all of the crappy people that have a hard time swimming push towards the front because they want to make sure that they have time to be able to finish whatever. So,
hey man, those may be our viewers. We're going to go less crappy people and more people trying to give themselves extra time, trying to game the system.
Okay, whatever. I had an enjoyable swim.
You good?
There's 1,200 people in this?
Yeah.
1,500 people maybe? With that many people, you're going to get bumped. You're going to get tapped. But I didn't have anybody, breaststroking or backstroking or whatever. And we always get that closer to the front.
Yeah, I passed a girl. I was also breaststroking at the front. So I wasn't at the front. So in my time, there was somebody breaststroking with me. But once I solved my problem, I left her behind.
So, to be fair, you do want to be towards the front of the swim because you probably didn't experience, but the sun.
Yes.
On the down leg after you make the first right-hand turn, and actually, really, after you make the second left-hand turn, you're both kind of going parallel, and it's towards the sun. For the first turn, it was overcast for me, but by the time I made the turn to the right, it had not been overcast, and the sun was a little bit higher in the sky, and it was kind of hard to see. So that's if you're more towards the front of the swim, then you don't get the sun as much. So that's a thing to be considered for this race. Yeah. They have changed the swim several times, so who knows if they'll do this course again.
So this is the 2024 edition.
Yeah.
I feel like we should note that the transition is in a much better spot. So
much better.
I feel like we should rewind. We almost did this race, and we did this one.
We've started this race twice. We just finished it once.
When we were doing the 70.3 world record, they had thunderstorms and shortened it, and so the race wouldn't count for us. So we weren't going to expend all energy for a race.
We did the swim, and we had a flight that was. They delayed the race, and then if we were to do the whole race, we were going to miss our flight. And it wasn't going to count for us.
It wasn't going to count.
So we did the swim as a practice swim, and after doing the practice swim, we ran to transition, which was literally a half a mile, maybe more than that. And it was a long way. They fixed that, and it's in a much better place.
So it looks like they are doing things to improve every time. So this information may be dated as of 6:30 on Sunday. There's no telling what happens next year, but
that's what it was this year.
All right, so
on the bike.
So the bike is hilly. I don't care what they say, and I don't care what he says. I'm from Florida. There was we looked it up, there was more than 2,000 feet of elevation gain over the course of the bike. And the hills were, they weren't impossibly tough, but they were not easy hills for several of them.
It was definitely rolling.
And I was on hard mode on the bike, so...
I wasn't on hard mode. Somehow we have the same bike cases and the same bike, but Delta doesn't bend my rotor, so I don't know how that is.
Because you take half as many airplanes, really.
That's probably true. It's probably the Jacksonville to Atlanta flight.
It's really where they...
Time,
I don't know. My bike just barely made the flight. We got a delay out of Jacksonville, and I had to run to catch the thing. But fortunately, Delta waited on my bike. But you could hear just slamming. I was like, man,
this thing will fit in there.
There was only me. They were waiting on my bags. That was kind of brutal. But, so the bike, I'm going to title this course as I Never Met a U-Turn I Didn't Like. And I'm also going to say that the creator of the course was a climber with ADD. So I feel like we would just take a turn, go up a hill, and then take another turn, go up another hill. It was... I think they were making it more of a challenging bike than it had to be because there were 4, and I looked it up, 4 U-turns on the bike.
Apparently that's less from years past.
So apparently none of the roads in Iowa connect to one another where you could do a circle. They must have U-turns. 4 in one race is excessive. I get that sometimes U-turns occur, sometimes you have to have them. Generally 1, maybe 2 is... I wouldn't call it normal, but close to normal.
For this, I was thinking, as I was on the bike, I was thinking about what kind of rating would I give this bike. And there is a 2-mile section from mile 13.5 to mile 15.5 that you will hate. And it's actually, you get to going fast, and they have the lines in the road.
Yeah, the cracks in
the
the road.
It's a crack. I don't know why. They're very regular too, and they're very deep. And so, boom, you hit it. Boom, you hit it. People were losing lots of stuff on this course. I cannot believe I didn't see any blown tires or. There was definitely 90 max. I might even recommend 80.
Maybe 5 miles. There were 4 people stopped on the side of the road.
You go over a couple of railroad tracks and you do that twice. So people lost stuff there. But after when I'm doing the 13.5 to the 15.5, I'm like, my God, I'm gonna hate this bike. The rating just keeps getting lower and lower. And the first aid station wasn't until mile 15.7 or something like that, which is a little late. It's within the I think they try to do 14 to 16, so it's within the what they try to do, but it is on the later end of that. Once you got past that, the roads were actually pretty good.
They had some excellent roads. Roads.
Not all of them. And I would call it rolling hills. So, for me, for a very long time, everything was between 1540 and 1710 or 20 or something like that as far as my 5-mile splits. So, pretty equal. And we did do some hills that were harder during that time, but there must have been some good downhills in that because there was one hill that I was kind of like, oh, this is going to mess up my time, and it didn't. Ironically, the fastest time for me was from mile, I think it was 35 to 40, and that was a 15:05. And then the slowest one was mile 40 to 45, so the very next one, and that was 1840. So those were the 2 outliers. Everything else was, pretty similar. So you're spending the same amount of energy. The first 6.5 miles is flat. You go around the lake. Those are pretty decent roads.
Yeah, that's a nice part.
And the last 6.5 miles are flat because you go around the lake. Not the exact same way, but you still do it. So that's actually pretty good because I mean, the whole bike isn't flat, which means you stay in the same gear, and that's kind of a different way to train than if you're doing rolling hills. But you get a warm up, and then you get a cool down, and I appreciated that really. And then you did the rolling hills in between. So I liked the bike. I mean, as I was coming in, I was like, this is a 6. I mean, it's not a 7 because you take off for that 2 mile stretch, and then the aid stations were kind of in weird places, but it was, for me, the bike was a 6.
Wow.
I know, yeah. I mean, it was a pretty decent bike.
I mean, I will give it above average. I'm going to give it a 4.5. I'm going to give it above average.
I mean, above average is like 5 or 5.5. You don't think so? I mean, average is supposed to be 4, but
average would be 3.5 out of 7 bananas. So really, I'm giving the whole point above average.
no, because you go 1, 2, 3, 4 is the middle of 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
Because you don't go below 1.
4.5 above average.
Okay.
Done. So the bike in is about 3/4 of transition to get in.
I mean, they do that on most Ironman races so that it's equal to go out and equal to come in, no matter where you are in transition.
Yes, yes.
But it is. I mean, you do have to.
So it was not complainably long. I just feel like that was a note of your transition time may be longer because you're starting a transition. So the run is, I'm going to call it a 2-loop course. It is a 2-loop course with a string, and it's interesting.
I mean, the string goes to downtown. It's the finish.
The finish, yeah. So you basically do 10 miles around the lake, and then the last 3 miles are to the finish line downtown. The run is reasonably flat. I had some minor hills, but I would call it a flat run, with the exception of that last 3 miles. There is I'm going to call it an overpass. So they've got to get to downtown, and there's a river and a trail and a train line. And so I was complaining to Billy about it, and he's like, "Man, how do you get there?" I said, "Well, we passed this beautiful flat bridge just to our right, so it seems like we could incorporate that." I don't know. I might have been a little grouchy, but the run had at least 3 U-turns on it. I don't mind U-turns on the run as long as the mileage is exact, because I feel like you're in control of the cone. There's not. It was
and the 3 U-turns you hit twice.
Yes.
So really 6.
The path was a bike run trail,
like a rails to trails kind of thing.
But I'd call it a wide, like almost a 2-lane road. So it was very rare that I felt crowded or felt like, so you could not go 2 abreast and still have people pass you. But for the most part, people were staying towards the right side and didn't have any problems with people passing.
I did pass people as the third person, like they would be 2 abreast and I'd go around them. But you could really only do that if you just had one person coming from the other lane. I mean, you probably could have done it if there was 2, but it'd be kind of a tight squeeze. I mean, this run, I think Sam looked it up, and this run is rated like the number 3 run in all of Ironman 70.3s. Is that the deal?
Yeah, I'm not ranking it that high.
Yeah, but it was a good run.
It was a good run. I'm not as far as the United States go, 3rd feels a bit high, because there was just a lot of unshaded parts of the run.
But there was a lot of shaded parts.
There was a lot of shady parts, and when the humidity, as of today, was not what we experienced in the southeast, where you go under a bridge and it would drop. When you were in the shade, it would drop 20 degrees. So without that humidity keeping it hot, without the sun on you, it was far more manageable. Tons of ice. This is to the volunteers. They would set the ice out and let people just grab it with their hands. So it was that I don't care about that, and it's certainly more efficient. But it makes it so that you can't put, if you're carrying a bottle or you're carrying anything, you want to put ice in it or you want to drink ice or whatever. That's not going in my mouth. But there were aid stations that they were controlling the ice, and so I would fill up the bottle then or do whatever I needed to do.
well stocked. The aid stations were about every mile. I mean,
Yeah,
it was
plenty of
they
aid
had
stations.
plenty of aid stations, and I mean we were kind of late in the race, and they never ran out of ice. I mean, never even came close to running out of ice. They did the depending on the aid station or even the table that you went to, the water or Gatorade was sometimes cold and sometimes not as cold. But if you were looking for something cold, usually you could find it at every aid station, depending on what you grabbed.
Red Bull was an interesting touch. Did
I
you notice that?
Attention. Yeah.
So it looks like no Red Bull this year. I mean, it seems like we would have seen them as a sponsor, but that was an interesting change. It's not something that I do on the course, but if you like Red Bull on the course, I don't think it's going to be out there this year. So bring your own.
I've never taken I've never taken Red Bull on the course, so it doesn't bother me. But I agree, if you're used to taking Red Bull,
you'd be upset.
Yeah. I mean, they did have gels with caffeine. They had Coke or whatever, but no Red Bull.
So, in continuance of my hard mode story, I have a high ankle sprain still recovering from. If you didn't watch our whatever Goose Pond triathlon story, so short version is I decided to try a surf simulator, and I'm not 25 anymore. Sometimes things happen. So yeah, a high ankle sprain, coming back from it. So my run vastly improved today over 2 weeks ago.
Sam killed it.
But still dealing with high ankle sprain and undertraining. So hard mode. You're welcome.
Man, I'm undertraining too.
By choice.
Finish line was through downtown. Once you got past the bridge, it became a little more manageable. I mean, the bridge was tough. It was in the middle of the sun, and it was. I mean, it wasn't steep, but it was nowhere I walked it. I'd not try to run it.
It's an overpass bridge.
I mean, it was pretty long, but once you got into downtown, there was actually some shade from the buildings, and you could choose to be in the shade, and man, that made a big difference. Plenty of spectators. I liked the run. I mean, as far as runs go, it was. I don't know that I'm. I mean, in order to get into downtown, you've got to go over a bridge. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
And maybe that flat one is just more traffic. I mean,
They
closed a lot of downtown.
Yeah, they did not. It did not bother them to close roads at all.
No, there were a lot of roads downtown that were closed. So
you got a score on a run?
I don't know. I'll give them a 6 on the run too. I mean, I don't. Maybe it should even be higher than that, but
I mean, I'm with you. I give it a 6 on the run. It was a good run. I'm going to give it less than 50% shaded, but
I would say that's probably pretty accurate.
So just prepare yourself. That I used ice in my hat the whole time. It wasn't super hot. It was less than 70.
So like your ideal run was probably Washington.
Washington was fantastic.
Where
Tons
the whole
of shade.
thing's pretty much shaded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not too hot.
Yeah. And flat. I mean,
Yeah. Weird that the guy from Florida likes a good flat run.
Finish line, we got a hat in the middle.
All right, so I am displaying the hat. These are the same hats as last year with the vented sides. It's not my style, but it's a really, really good running hat because it offers lots of airflow, and especially I put ice in the top of this, and it gives it somewhere excellent to go. The metal is, of course, in the shape of Iowa, and they are still doing the colored metals. So, appreciate them putting the effort into that.
Yeah, that's a good metal.
Nothing.
I hadn't even looked at mine.
Yeah, nothing terribly exciting, but always fun to get a nice medal. Always fun to get the hat. Any other parting thoughts for us?
No, we got to train better.
So we have almost 3 weeks before our next race. And Billy, you're hearing it here first.
I didn't say I was going to train better. I said we need to.
Committed to training is what we all heard. He's training. So I did have a story on a bike coming in. It was the halfway turnaround. It was really, I think that's what that was. You're coming down a steep hill, and I was getting after it, mostly because I knew the pain that I was going to have on the other side. But a guy was riding two abreast, and you have people coming up on the other side. So it's a 2-lane highway. You're going out, they're coming up. No cars. But I started screaming at him pretty early on because I knew he wasn't going to hear me. But I wanted to
warn him
as soon as he could. He was riding two abreast, and he's not pedaling. Right. So if he is making an attempt to pass, you're pedaling and you're pushing in. Ironman rules are very specific on the pass. Not that I followed them, but I do my best to stay right because I understand there's plenty of people faster than me that would like to get around. So he got screamed at, and he caught me on the uphill and apologized.
Those Iowans,
they were so nice about it.
They're so nice.
I did not cuss him on with my screaming. I was just trying to make sure that he heard me and I didn't crash into him. But he was like, "Man, I'm so sorry. I'm a first timer. So I'm not going to apologize. He's not getting an apology here, but I appreciate his apology. That didn't really bother me either way. I hope it didn't affect his race. I hope that he either used that as motivation or forgot about it. But do not be afraid to correct people on the course. Lovingly would be better. Screaming's not the best option, but when you're coming down...
if you're going 30, 35, going down a hill, what else can you do?
So...
hey, move out of the way!
I tried to be as nice as I could and say, don't worry about it. It's no big deal. I just, want you to be aware. The poor guy was scared. We come up on a girl going slow, and he didn't want to get around to pass her. I was like, this is the time for you to be in the left line. So there's always rider education is always appreciated. If you'll do it for somebody, they will have a better time. So don't ever be afraid to, hey, don't do it that way, do it this way. So it keeps everybody safe. So that's my parting note.
No.
You have any thoughts? So overall in the race, we got an overall banana score?
Weather should not affect our stuff, but it was such a pleasant day.
It was gorgeous.
It was a really pleasant day. So, I gave it a 6 on the run and a 6 on the bike. The swim is not my favorite swim, but the improvements they made to transition kind of bumps that up. So, I give it like a 5 3/4, which is, probably shouldn't do 3/4, but whatever. It's not quite a 6 race, but it was a good race.
I'm with him. I'm going to give it a 5.5. Overall, pretty good race.
We're not going to do it again, but I would recommend the race.
Doing it again. Yeah, if somebody called and said, hey, I want you to do this race with me, I would do it again, but I would not.
Like on your own, you wouldn't.
We're not from the area, and so it's a lot of trouble to get here. So we would not be doing this race again, not because of the race itself.
Yeah. I like the fact that they're learning and are improving the race.
Yes. So kudos to the race director for that.
Yep.
All right. Stay tuned. Our next episode is going to come from
Happy Valley.
Happy Valley, Pennsylvania, where the hills are mighty. We're going to do some training on bridges